All right.
Yeah, and we're live. Not live, but recording.
Oh, surprise, we're live streaming right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Big welcome to this podcast. The first
Oh, thank you.
episode of the first real episode, besides the trailer.
It's an honor. I know that I should have been the second guest after someone famous, so I'm honored that you let me be first.
Hey, you're at least super close to the fame, I would say.
Close to the fame, that's fair.
It's not that big difference between you two. But I would say let's not spoil who it is.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm keeping it a secret.
Perfect. Yeah, you sent me a song. The thing is, I'm gonna play it now for the listeners, but you can't hear it when I'm playing that.
Uh-oh.
Just let me hop into it. The intro is super nice, well made, with that plugs.
There's a little sample from One Piece that I just recorded on my phone.
That's amazing. Ooh.
I'm having to judge by your expression where you are in the song.
The synth in the drop is hitting really good. Okay, I think a bit after the first drop is good for our listeners, because then they can check the whole song out by themselves.
Sounds good.
And that's actually leads me to my first question. The track name is "We Used to Watch Anime Together." So what's the thought behind that? Is there a story?
So I try to, especially with my originals, and I know like in the last year, probably the bulk of my listeners know me for like Zelda covers and stuff like that. But if you look back, I've actually been in the scene for probably like 4 years now, almost 5, and I just was only making originals, and almost all of my originals have these really long titles that are very descriptive, and I do that because I'm not recording lyrics, and I am on some level a lyricist. I just never found success with that type of music, with pop and singing. But I was like, how can I help convey the story that I'm hearing and that I'm imagining as I'm making these instrumental sounds? And so a lot of them, some of them, it's just kind of a stretch. Where after the song, I'm like, okay, I need a name, and I'm like, I don't know this. Whereas this one, I was sort of, I started watching One Piece, which is the anime, which I have. There's a little like voice clip, which I was just watching it on TV, and I pulled out my phone and hit voice record and recorded that sample, and then filtered it down and then pitch shifted it so that I can't get copyright strikes. But as I was getting into One Piece, I was like, man, it's funny is I used to have like so many friends, and I used to like know this girl who's really into anime and all this stuff, and I never really got into it. And then now, years later, I'm discovering this anime that I really love, while I don't like know all those people. So I was sort of just thinking, how do I spin this as like a story? And the best stories and songs are always a little melodramatic. Like if you're too honest, it doesn't sell. It's hard to communicate, because in real life often isn't as exciting as, movies and stuff. But if you can, it's why it's easiest to write songs in heartbreak, right? Is when it seems more severe, it seems more dramatic in the moment.
You're channeling the emotions into your music. That's how I see it. If you're going through a heartbreak, or let's say if you're having a super stressful time, the best music comes out of strong emotions. That's why I personally not as much like reggae music, or there are two types of reggae music. There's the one with the pain behind it, and it's amazing and great to listen. And then there's like this one, a special side of, let's say, reggae music that is super happy. And I just kind of don't connect that well if someone's like in a super good mood and makes a happy song. I kind of personally do not connect with it.
Yeah.
But on the other side, on days where I'm feeling like super happy, it's nice to have it in the background, but it's never emotionally the same type of connection. You know what? That's how I see it. And yeah,
I think happy songs for me just have to seem genuine. Like I don't know if you remember the I'm blanking on his name, but he's a super famous producer who made is it just Pharrell who made Happy, that song? Like,
because I'm happy.
Yeah. And the story behind that is that it was super manufactured. He's just like, I just want to make a song that is like everything about it is specifically tailored to convey happiness. And I was like, oh, that kind of ruins it for me. Like if it was just like an overflow of your real life joy, then that's happy. But I think like with hip hop, like with lyrical hip hop, I've always sort of been attracted to stories and people talk about struggle. It's one of the reasons why like early Kanye was really good. I don't know if that's a name I'm allowed to say anymore, but like if you listen to his early stuff, he talked about like his mom and growing up and like where was his dad, like all this cool stories about, or like not having enough money. And I'm like, that's super relatable. But then when you hear songs that are just like, I roll up and all the ladies love it, and it's like just flexing, and I'm like, is that even real, or are you just talk about what you want to be real?
Yeah, I really love all the old Kanye songs, even the, let's say, not that meaningful ones. Like actually, I discovered, and only like 2 weeks ago, his one song, My Workout Plan, and I'm listening to it every time when I go to the gym and do my first exercise because it's pushing me like. But yeah, this whole flexing hip hop is totally not my cup of a tea, the Englands would say, because it's lots of word and no meaning behind that actually. Like going out, spending 100K on like watches and clothes, there's no actual meaning behind it.
Well, I get the impression, and I'm by no means like an authority on music marketing or anything, but I really focus on building community, and I have awesome community. Like I almost hate calling my fans because that feels like reductionistic. I'm like, these are my friends that just happen to like my music. But I feel like people appreciate, especially in the last few years, really appreciates just seeing truth and seeing the genuineness, because I've definitely felt the pressure with making content where I'm like, man, my space, like the reason why so this is my streaming setup, but the reason why it's dark behind me is because these walls aren't finished. They don't even have like mud. It's just bare drywall. And I'm like, man, that looks so tacky. And I feel like it cheapens and invalidates me if people realize that like I don't have this like super nice studio that's super tricked out and all this stuff. But then at the same time, that's relatable because a lot of people, especially like our generation, a lot of people, well, I'm 30, so a lot of guys in their 30s, unless they happen to pick an amazing trade, those guys are doing great. But a lot of people in their 30s are like, man, I really wish I had a better house by now, or I really wish that I had all these things. And I think being able to say same and like, here's some art for you, it's sort of like, oh, I can resonate with this now because you're in the same place as me. Whereas a lot of people almost seem too out of touch. It was like, I don't remember was it Imagine? There's that video, did you see, of all the celebrities during the like COVID lockdowns that went around, all these celebrities saying Imagine together, and they're like, we're all in this together while they're in these massive mansions. And it just really like the feedback was not positive. A lot of people were really upset because they're like, man, you're so out of touch. Like, yeah, we're all locked at home, but I'm locked at home in my like studio apartment that smells like cat, where you're locked at home in your like mansion that's the size of 5 regular houses.
And has the own gym and own swimming pool.
Yeah.
Maybe like 20 workers there who you can talk to every day and have like real conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen that video, but I can imagine that this seems so fake.
It's not worth watching. But
and to your point where you said that you don't want or don't like to call your fans, just call them homies. Actually, I told you that I went to the seminar, right? And there was this one guy who was coaching for like selling seminars, and he's super cool on social media. He calls everyone, every video he starts, he's like, "Hey yo, what's up, homies?" and tells a little story. And yeah, he's like 80 or something, but so fresh, you know. Also using this young people's language and everything. Just get a word that you are super comfortable with.
Well, I remember, so I've had a lot of jobs, but for part of my background, I worked with kids at like after school programs. So it was one of those things where like, you know, it's usually lower income families where both parents have to work full time. They work longer hours. So then when their kids get out of school, they have nowhere to go. So we just had this little spot where I'd even like, it's funny because it seems strange now, like in our culture it's changed that much in just a few years, but this random man, would go to the school, and like all these kids coming out of school would come and line up, and I'd walk them to the after school program and stuff. But anyways, I just remember like we started just saying friends is like the most generic term, because they're like, all right, boys and girls. It starts to get like really tedious, and then it's almost like patronizing in a way. I don't know, because like you don't call grown people boys and girls, you call children boys and girls, and where it's almost like uplifting kids to just be like, "You're my friend." It's like, "I am," and so I've gotten used to that, just calling everyone friends. But I've also like part of my brand and my whole demeanor has just been my language, because I have a very, just by nature of where I've grown up and who I've been around, I tend to use like dude and man, sup bro, and it's very like, it's not put on, it's just the way I talk, and it's almost older, like it's almost not young people language. It's kind of outdated, but it's got to a point where it's almost like a running joke that people expect me to just call you dude, and it's completely like unspecific and ungendered. Everyone's a dude. Like it doesn't mean anything. And but yeah, I think especially being instrumental artists, if you can find any way to kind of communicate and show some character and have something for people to latch onto, because like what makes your chill beats different from the next guy's chill beats, and maybe it's, you know, the specific saturation you use, or the way you compress, or the synths you use, or something. I mean, a lot of chill beat guys don't even use synths, but I like synths. And I think what it comes down to is when someone starts to follow through and they'd be like, well, who even is this? Are you a person? Is there anything for them to connect with and resonate with? Or are you just like is it just music? And music speaks and it communicates, but by not having lyrics, it's a lot harder to make connections through just music. So that's where, and that's my socials. I'm so bad at socials. I post like once every other week. So not someone to emulate there, but even by socials, I really just like, it's a combination between like, hey, check out this song, and just like memes, or just like little skits that I thought up that I thought would be funny.
But actually, memes are our generation's way to communicate. Let's be honest.
Oh, totally.
It's totally legit to communicate through memes. Also, I often thought about like making my own memes, but I'm like not talented at that at all. And this whole social media thing, I was kind of in the same place because I hated it firstly, and now I'm uploading nearly daily video. But that came super naturally by just realizing that you don't have to give a shit about that, about what you are presenting to the outside. Let's say if I'm super tired, but I feel like, okay, yeah, let's keep my friends updated. That's actually a great word that you brought in. Probably I'm gonna steal that. But
do it.
But to like keep the community and the friends updated, just saying hi, I'm working on this song. And it's so funny. I remember doing a Instagram reel, and it automatically get linked to Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook at all. And lastly, I went out to a club where I know the bartender, and he came to me like, yeah, have you seen my comment I wrote on Facebook? Do you need a tea? Your voice is so scratchy. You sounded so sick, man. I wrote you that you can come over and grab a tea, and I'm like, oh shit, sorry, I don't check Facebook.
Oh, that's fun. I think your voice is iconic. I love it. Like, especially as I've gotten to know you better, every time you start your video and you're like, it's your boy Tony or Relaxicorn, you go back and forth or you use your real name. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's my boy.
I kind of stole that from El Dre. He's always he says something that I don't really understand, but he says your boy also.
Yeah. Oh, he did, because I've watched LJ for like ages, and he used to do this thing where he called, was it like my fellow appliances or something? And it was like, his thing was, you can be whatever you want to be. So it's like, if you want to be the kitchen table, you could be the kitchen table or whatever. It is sort of like nonsense, but is sort of just like the, like, kind of poking fun at his own point to really encourage people.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know if he
see that.
I don't know if he still does that, but some of his early merch and stuff was like the kitchen table and stuff. But
okay, cool. No, I actually don't know that. There's videos of him, and I think that I saw like hundreds of them by now.
Yeah, he's a good example actually of someone who, like, yeah, he had a lot of luck with timing, I'd say. Like a lot of stuff like him he was one of the first guys that really started doing lo-fi covers, and then realized there's a market for that. But if you go back far enough, he started in his mom's garage.
Yeah, I know that story.
I find that really encouraging, because there's a lot of guys like Fred again right now is huge in the dance music scene. And like, even if you like his music's good, but his whole story, he's not an industry plant, but it's like, no, he was just handed a career. Like, for like, rich kid, was sent to school, was coached by Brian Eno directly and stuff like that. Whereas I'm like, show me the stories of the scrappy kids who like had no right to be in this industry and just worked their way up by like blood and grit. And now that we all know their name, like that to me is the encouraging stories. So I really respect LJ for that.
It's funny, Fred again. I know so many like there's TikTok videos of him, and I know his name because I was in the scene as well. But actually, I cannot tell you one song, to be honest.
Yeah, I know I've heard them. I just don't know that I'd like remember any. But
yeah, definitely heard them. But I have like not a single name I could say. Okay, that's a song. Made by him.
Well, I think that's in part a symptom of like kind of the playlist era of music too.
Yes.
That most of us, like, you search for a topic and you shuffle a playlist or whatever, like you just shuffle Lofi Beats playlists. And that's another thing that we're fighting with, because I always think like Spotify every year, it's like a question of like, are they even going to be here next year? Like, how are they doing financially? But also we've seen like MySpace seemed untouchable, and then it just crashed, and Vine, and we've seen these big companies just disappear. So like, how do we have like a following, and how do we make an impact that goes beyond like the algorithm? And I have my own ideas. I think albums are a big part of that, because I think, well, and I get messages that are like, I love your Zelda album or I love your Last Airbender album, but I don't get messages, well, very rarely do I get messages for a single track.
Yeah,
that someone's like, I liked this one track. This track was good, but they'll like, big cohesive thematic albums and stuff.
This totally makes sense. And I can fairly agree on this point because I did one album this year and that's exactly the same thing. The feedback comes when feedback comes in, it's always about the album, never about the single. I haven't thought about that yet.
I was talking to Chill Astronaut, typing with Chill Astronaut just a little while ago because I asked him to be part of my Lord of the Rings lo-fi, but he's like, dude, I've done every Lord of the Rings song that exists. I was like, okay. But he was saying he just released an album of all of his Lord of the Rings lo-fi, and I don't know if it might have had 1 or 2 new tracks on it, but for the most part, it was just all the singles he'd already released, he compiled into an album. And he said since doing that, all of those songs have been doing way better.
Okay.
Because people just like the idea of the album and it's easier to find. And
interesting.
Yeah,
that's why I thought about releasing singles after singles, but like keep the vision behind to let it up to an album.
Yeah.
And make like in the end a combined album of all the singles plus 1-2 bonus tracks. Because it also looks pretty dope if you check Spotify and you have some albums listed, not just singles.
It looks way cleaner to me if you have just like a few albums instead of a boatload of singles. That's something that I realized, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Bad Snacks, the producer, but I she's someone who I've seen around over the years. She was in like an Andrew Huang. Yeah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Andrew, the guy hey, it's Andrew, clap, that guy.
I know this guy. He's cool.
She was in one of his videos, and I was like, oh, she's pretty good. That's cool. And then just recently, someone was like, dude, you kind of sound like Bad Snacks. And I was like, I guess I should go listen to her. But I've been really impressed at her whole career has been very focused on like big releases and big albums and hyping them up, like a lot more like traditional musicians used to. And she's like kind of EDM. She's like chill EDM.
Yeah.
And it's worked for her. And I'm like, I respect that. I respect doing something different because everyone tells you right now, they're like single every week. And then there's a few people like, there's Jend. You've probably seen the ads for independent Jend's artist.
Oh yeah, I see his ads like all day long.
I bought it and it's good, but if you're someone who's really in it like me and you're watching all the videos and reading all the stuff, it's sort of just like aggregating knowledge. That's like taking the bits and combining. But he's one of the first ones who's like, if you release slower, then you can kind of milk your releases and you get more by promoting them. Because if you release a song and it's great, but only 2 people hear it, and then you already move on to the next song, then you didn't even really explore the potential of that one track. So I've been trying that. I don't know if it's working, but I've been trying to set a little bit of a slower release schedule. And it helps alternating with if I have Humble Beats is my record label. I started really just for my friends. Yeah, you're on it. Your song's doing all right. I'm pushing to get that song blown up. But I saw, especially this year, maybe changing topics slightly, but especially this year, I saw how when artists work together, especially independent artists, you get this like there's an expression, a rising tide lifts all ships. So that the imagery is like if there's a bunch of beach ships and you need to get your ship out, it's like, well, if you can somehow bring in the water and raise the tide, then it's going to help everyone the same and help you.
That's true.
And I've seen that with because I pitched when I did my Zelda stuff earlier this year. Yeah, it is still 2024. Maybe by the time anyone watches this, will be 2025. But early 2024, I did my first Zelda album. And I put together this big Zelda playlist. And I didn't have enough of my own songs to make a full playlist. So I started bringing in friends and other artists who I respect who'd have Zelda lo-fi and made this whole playlist. And I mentioned to one person, I was like, hey, I see you just started a playlist and it only has like 2 followers. I was like, mine already has 200. Why don't you just promote mine? It has all your music anyways. And then it'll benefit us each more because there's more advertising to this one playlist. And they're all like, no, get out of here. You're just trying to like, I was like, how do you not see this?
Weird.
But then I realized, well, what if I say, it's a record label. Like if I say, hey, want to release your song on my record label, you like give me a little bit of your royalties and I'll put it back towards advertising. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh, what a great idea. And then all I'm doing is like the share of
same
royalties
thing with another name.
Yeah, the share of royalties that I get from you or whoever else goes directly into advertising playlists. But because I'm advertising playlists, the benefit to me isn't even money that I'm taking from artists. It's actually just the like association, that like shared growth. And I think if more independent artists started thinking that way, and we stopped being so individualistic, and I don't know what it's like for you in Switzerland, but you're in Switzerland, right? You speak Swiss German, I assume.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I don't know what it's like for you, but in the West or in North America specifically, it's very individualistic. Everyone's like very thinking on, okay, how am I going to make enough money? And there's been these little like social experiments where they're like, if you had the option to get $200, but then that guy also gets $200, or get $150, but that guy gets nothing, which one would you choose? And almost everyone takes the $150.
Okay.
It's like,
damn.
It's like, what? It's like, how stupid is that? It's like, how did we end up in this place where we so badly want other people to fail that will hurt ourselves in the process? And especially in independent music, like it just doesn't make sense.
I guess I always had that point of view that you're just like a small bit if you're producing or putting out music. Same, you can apply that to all kind of art actually. And there's like absolutely no need to be so selfish in this scene. Just if you switch positions with the listener of music, I don't know not a single person that is listening to one artist and no artist else.
Yeah.
It's always, if you're listening to music, you'll go through hundreds of artists a day. Let's say you go to the gym, you listen to around 50 artists in like 2 hours or 1 hour. Usually. And there's actually absolute no need to be so self-centered when it comes to music. And also, one thing that really drove me crazy, I don't know if you have listened to the trailer episode, but when I was producing techno, if you pitched your song to labels, a lot of the replies were like, yeah, the song is cool, but it's a bit too experimental and not in the style of what our artists are producing. And then you go through a playlist and every song sounds kind of as if the same guy have produced it.
Yeah.
And the individuality was super secondary. And what I really love about this lo-fi hip-hop scene, you can really go well with just like talking to other producers, hitting them up, hey, let's do a track. Yeah, cool. 2 weeks later, have a track together. That's so fantastic. And this year, I can't even say how many singles I made just by myself. I guess 90% were just collabs.
Yeah.
And it's super fun. It's always two worlds coming together and create something completely new. That's like, if you're painting and you mix two colors together, super unique new color. And that's amazing. And I guess that's also interesting for the listeners. I don't know how you came into the lo-fi music. For me, it was actually first Lo-Fi Girl, because that was super big. It was like 6 years ago when it came up. But at the moment right now, I cannot listen to the radio anymore because it sounds super, how do I say it? Sounds kind of all in the same way. And when I discovered, let's say, El Rey or Lucian, this really brought me back into this, and then I started producing lo-fi hip-hop.
Yeah. Well, and that's been from like right at the start. I think when I started making lo-fi, I didn't entirely understand like what the genre. Sorry, my neighbor's snow blowing right now. I don't know if you can hear that. It's really loud. But I did not fully understand what like the genre trademarks were, like what the sounds were and stuff. And I remember the first time I pitched a song on Submit Hub, and this dude was like, "This sounds like crap. You didn't even filter the hi-hats." And I was like, "Filter the hi-hats? What?" And then now I filter hi-hats. And then even it's funny because if people, I don't know that the average listener is like that attuned, but if you go through my catalog, anything I've put out since the first time I did a song with you as a Relaxicorn collab, my hi-hats have changed. They're all a little bit quieter, a little bit quieter and a little bit more filtered now. Because you're like, it's funny because I think when I first worked with you too, I didn't know you were European. Because North Americans are very like cautious in the way we say things. You're just like, these hi-hats sound a little shit. And I was like, oh, what? And then I figured out you're Swiss, and I was like, oh, that makes sense because my mom's German, so I'm used to my German relatives just being like, you look fat. I'm like, okay. Whereas in America, it's very, you have to soft serve everything. But no, ever since then, I was like, okay, I'm gonna change the way I do my hi-hats. That's a good point.
Actually, just if you really want to change the sound, in my opinion, you should always produce as you enjoy. Like, watch every track you do as if you were your biggest fan, and if you can vibe to it, then you're doing a great job. Sometimes it doesn't have to be just for the listeners, or how Rick Rubin would say, don't do music for the listeners.
Yeah.
He always says, never do music for the audience, just do it for yourself. And he's kind of right in some points, because without this kind of thinking, we would have only like industry standard songs. That would be really boring. But yeah, for lo-fi, this filtered hats are kind of important. If you're listening to lo-fi while reading, and most of the time I'm listening to it while reading, new I also started listening to it at the gym. But at the gym, I would like enjoy some more harsh and more full hi-hats. But for reading, it distracts just too much.
Yeah.
Or for sleeping, let's say, a lot of people sleep and have like a chill lo-fi playlist going on. For this, it have really to be a super quiet high end.
That's something that I push sometimes, but I test. So even like that song we played, we used to watch anime together. I was like, I know this is pushing it a little bit with some of the like bassy synth and stuff, but I was like, well, let me lay here and just listen to it. It's sort of like take a nap and see if at any point I'm like, actually, that's super annoying. And that's actually Koji Kondo. I don't know how you pronounce it, but he did all the original Zelda music. He had noted that he's like, when I first wrote all these melodies, what I'd do is I'd sit there and listen to them on repeat to see if it became super annoying, because in video games you end up listening to the same melody over and over. And he's like, so then if it was super annoying, I wouldn't use it. And like, that's such a good idea. I'd listen to your song, and after a while you're like, okay, and then, well, when you're producing, usually to have some separation, like take a break after you've made it, but listen to it a few times, and if you're like, actually that snare is starting to tick me off, then change the snare and those sorts of things. But to the sound and being experimental idea, I think when like Suno AI is like the AI where you say, make me a lo-fi beat, and it craps out a lo-fi beat. When I first went there and I was like, make me a lo-fi beat, and I was like, make me a lo-fi beat in this style, and I tried a bunch of different things. I tried using me as a reference. I had no idea who I am, so it's like, ouch. No. But every song it put out sounded like a lo-fi girl track. And I was like, okay, this tells me like a couple things, but one of them is that I'm not super concerned for being replaced by AI, because it's not even trying to sound like me. It's trying to sound like Lo-Fi Girl. But then that's actually when I went and I made that song. So I was like, how do I lean into what's unique about me, and how do I be a little bit different and like still fit into this lo-fi genre, but not sound like something that Suno AI can crap out with no effort. And I think we're gonna, if AI music, if there's no like regulation or anything, or if the public doesn't have like the outcry to stop it, I think you're gonna start seeing people being more experimental, because you almost need to, through your music, be like, I'm human, like, hey.
But I have a theory on that, and it has something to do with this never ending circles that repeats herself. Because if you go to any major style of music that was made, I don't say produced, because like the music back 100 years back when was really made, and at the end of each era there was this anarchy in the music that leads into a complete new era. And we can take the same for lo-fi as well, because it started as this super chill sleep and study music, right? And it gained so much popularity that you can hear it in coffee shops, you can hear it everywhere, actually.
Yeah.
And I guess what will happen in future is that you have this main genre, and then you already have the lo-fi covers of video games. We both know a lot of people that are focusing just on this, and you made some awesome Zelda covers too. I lent a little bit into the video game covers, but like one song here, one song there. I don't think that I would love to do a full cover album. Then I would switch or just make the originals. But we have now this little subgenre of this big lo-fi thing. And I guess, and this is like a theory of mine, that we will soon have for every individual situation in life some fitting beats. Let's say last time I went to the gym, and I usually take my super mix from YouTube Music.
Yeah.
And I was doing this exercise, and this one lo-fi track came on. I don't know which one, but I can remember that I started doing the exercise more slowly and slowly. And man, that burned so hard. I have still like the muscle sore, or how do I say it in English, when you really have the soreness in my stomach for like 1 week now. I cannot like laugh too hard, because then it hurts again. But I was like in this crushing machine.
Yeah.
And I was like in a normal tempo, then lo-fi came on, and I did it so slow, and I did like 3 repeats, and it starts to burn, and I'm like, hell yeah, that's exactly where I need to go and hit. And then I started yesterday the same again, when doing like leg press and like some bench press. I did it so slow, and today I can feel every part of my muscles sore. That's so good. And I think lo-fi could make a super good impact on how you're doing your training and how efficient that is.
Yeah. I think I don't know how long you want to go, but one more kind of point I'd like to make is, I think, talking about you said it started as just super chill study beats or whatever, and I think what we're seeing is I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, lo-fi's dead, lo-fi had its moment, like look at the stream numbers, and I think for one reason, the reason why like Mondo Loops went from, I don't know what he had, like 20 million to now 3 million or whatever monthly listeners, isn't because lo-fi is dead. It's because now there's more artists to listen to, and there's more variety. And some people are like, okay, I like lo-fi, but actually I prefer this lo-fi that goes a little harder. I prefer video game lo-fi or something else. I think we're seeing the emergence of a genuine scene of like a culture, and it's almost a subculture that you can also be in other ones. Because I've been surprised how many lo-fi guys have like some EDM background or metal. A lot of us are. I really like metal.
Me too.
It's because it's like it's about creating a space where you just slow down for a bit. And it's with cozy gaming and all these sort of other ideas, or like book talkers and lo-fi. It creates this space of slowing down, and it's becoming another subculture in itself.
And I would say metal music is the best example for what I tried to explain before, when it shifts to a lot of different subgenres. Because let's think back to when we had like Megadeth, Black Sabbath, and Iron Maiden, right? And they all had their individual touch, but it was like this classic metal.
Yeah.
And now we have black metal, death metal, we have hardcore, we have so many subgenres that I cannot even name you 5, but there are thousands. I had a flatmate back when I lived in a flat share. He listened to Norwegian black metal. And for me, it was in the first listen, it wasn't metal at all. It was like super quiet, like quietly and chill played electric guitars. And there was a woman singing super soft and beautiful. Like nothing that I would say this is black metal.
Yeah.
It had, in my eyes, nothing to do with black metal, but it's a beautiful track, and obviously it is. If the band says it's black metal, then it is, you know? I am totally accepting that. And I guess, after having such a big variety that you can really pick what you enjoy the most, it's obvious that each listener will go their own path.
Yeah. Well, metal, it makes my point too, because probably some of those bands like Sabbath or like Metallica and stuff like that they're down from their peak. So if you look at just those bands, you'd be like, oh, metal's dead. And it's like, no, metal's not dead. I liked those guys. And then I figured out that, oh, this other type of metal has more of an emphasis on syncopated riffs, and I prefer syncopated guitar riffs. So now I'm listening to these, and it's just sort of expanding and growing and becoming a broader culture. But I love that when you're like, if they say it's this genre, it is, because like I just put lo-fi in my name, and sometimes even I'll release something and I won't call it lo-fi, but because it's in my name, someone will be like, this isn't really lo-fi. And I'm like, well, it's from Lofi Cody, so what are you gonna say?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons why I did not put lo-fi in my name. I had kind of similar idea, like Tony Lo-Fi or Lo-Fi Tony or something like that. But then I listened to the first beats that I produced, and I'm like, that's actually not that lo-fi at all.
Yeah.
Because I kind of like more clean instruments. And if they're not too washed out and not sounding like a 55-year-old vinyl that laid in your garage, and you put it on a player with like such a 2 centimeter dust on it, and it sounds like at least it's just chill music, I would say.
I kind of stopped putting like white noise and vinyl crackle in my songs too. Sometimes it'll feel like it fits and I'll add it, but I used to it was almost a chore. And you can hear it in some of my earlier stuff where it's just too loud and it doesn't fit, because I was like, and now I guess I have to add vinyl crackle, whereas now it's just I only really do it if it serves the song. But
sometimes it's super cool having some vinyl crackles, but if it's on each track, it gets boring also, I would say.
Well, I think though with lo-fi, and it's still a thing where a lot of people, like every day someone's like, what do you do for work? I'm like, oh, I make lo-fi, and they're like, I don't even know what that means. So like it's still a concept that's not as globally known as a lot of us think. But you also have like lo-fi pop and lo-fi rock, and it's it's more about this concept of just using what you have.
And that's whole aesthetic.
Yeah, it's where it started, was from samples and using old samples and chopping those up. So they weren't adding vinyl crackle. It was there because they were using vinyl. So to me, what really attracted me to this whole thing was actually rock bands where I was like, wow, that bass sounds like trash.
Yeah.
But in the context of this song, it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I guess I don't need all this amazing equipment. I have a newer MacBook now, but I had my MacBook I had to replace because it would get too hot and it would start throttling itself and it'd create like digital distortion. But I was like, I have this MacBook. I have like a cheap, like Epiphone guitar. Like I had a Blue Yeti. This is probably actually a downgrade, but I like this mic better. Like I was like, I'm just gonna make whatever I can make with what I have and just do the best I can. And I think that I like that whole aesthetic, and it's one of the reasons like I've had guys from like different labels, not specifically lo-fi labels, but more general ones. Oh, did my camera just go sleep?
Yeah, just want to tell you, yeah.
Oh, I don't know what caused it.
Mine does that all the time because sometimes it's charging while being connected with the computer, sometimes not.
Oh, interesting. Shoot, what was I saying? Something about using what you have. I was making such a good point too. Just imagine I said something really profound, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great content for your podcast. But what was it? Someone in the comments finished my point. You know where I was going.
Perfect. Yeah, but I totally already understand your point with you don't need like a super fancy studio with all fancy gear. Just creativity alone is more than enough to make fantastic music. I really like also the old Lil Peep songs that are kind of super trashy mixed and super trashy mastered, but the songs have so much emotion into it that they're just perfect the way they are.
Yeah, still my most popular music is stuff where I didn't even know what mastering was for the first while. I did everything. I set my levels in the mix, and I'm going back and I'm actually remastering some of these songs because they just drive me nuts. And I'm realizing there's things where I just have stuff way too loud, and then I'm just absolutely like smashing a compressor on the mix bus to bring it back down. It's because I just had no concept of how compression works or anything, and it's just been learning as I go. But I was talking about record labels. So every once in a while I'll get like a record label that isn't lo-fi specific. They'll reach out to me because they saw a reel on Instagram of me singing. And then they click through to my Spotify and they see my numbers and they go, holy crap, like 90,000 monthly listeners or whatever. I'm not doing as well right now because December, it's all Mariah Carey. But they're like, let's see my monthly listeners, and they came from a reel of me singing. So then they'll send me a message and I'm like, no, go actually listen to my music. And then they'll go listen to it and they're like, oh, we hate this. It's like, we can't market this. It's like, it sounds like trash.
My God.
I'm like, yeah, I know. It's like record labels don't want lo-fi, but for some reason people are connecting with like my top song. Actually, I think my Hobbit lo-fi recently passed my Stranger Things song as like a top track. I was like, that Stranger Things song is like the least
song
lo-fi.
Is amazing, man. I just listened to it this week and it's such a good song.
Oh, thanks, man. I leaned into this. I'm getting distracted by the Hobbit song. The concept was, I was thinking, whenever people go, oh, you know that concerning Hobbit song, and they sort of like hum the melody or whatever, nobody ever does it right. The melody they hum is a little bit simpler and different from the one in the actual soundtrack. So my idea was that I actually played that melody instead of the true one, which I think technically makes a derivative work, but just don't tell Warner, we'll be okay.
Yeah, but that's actually super smart. That's super smart because there's a function that you can sum a song in Shazam, and when people are doing this simple melody, they will find your song.
Well, I was just thinking you would hear it and it'd peak and sound familiar and it'd resonate with you because people are for some reason remembering this melody in this simpler way. So then my song sounds more like the way they remember it. So I thought I'd kind of play on that nostalgia and that familiarity, and
it makes a lot of sense in my opinion.
Yeah,
because in German you would say "in my eyes," like in my also. Aus meiner Sicht means so much as from my vision.
Yeah. That makes sense.
It's the same like in my opinion.
Yeah. You might say in English from my perspective.
Oh, yeah, that's actually the same.
Which would mean the same thing, yeah.
I had such a good idea to talk about in my mind just right now, and it's gone.
Uh-oh. It's happening to both of us now.
Yeah. There was something.
Record labels don't like lo-fi. Make what you can with what you got.
Yeah,
there you go.
Exactly. About vocals and lo-fi, I think they are great. Some of my most favorite lo-fi tracks are with singing. This Deathbed. I don't really want to sing because I sing pretty horrible, but I make a cup of coffee for your head.
Yeah.
You know which one? I really love this song. And I'm right now working on some lo-fi covers with vocals of like old nostalgic tracks, like How to Save a Life from The Fray. This is the first one, and then the oh my god, what was the name? The one with I have tickets to Iron Maiden. The reel comes up every time because it's a guy singing a super female voice, and in the room are 3 females, and he's like kind of hold on. What's the name of this? Teenage Dirtbag.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and bedroom pop is sort of becoming a thing too. I actually had another producer. I don't know if he wants me to air a secret, so I won't name him. But I had another producer reach out, and he's like, "Hey, I've really liked messing with bedroom pop production, but I don't feel like I could sing. Do you want to just be like a ghost vocalist on this project?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And it's similar concept. It's almost for him as a really good producer, he's like trying to find ways to make it sound more improvised and less professional, because the whole idea is it's just like you're making your bedroom, and the vocal style is similar to like the Billie Eilish vocal effect, where she sings really quiet, but she sings right on top of her mic, so you get the proximity effect, but without peaking your limiter or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, because if you're just like at your parents' house or you have roommates or something trying to record vocals quietly in your room, you're going to get right on top of your mic and you're going to sing really quiet, and then it has this really distinct sound, and a lot of people like that sound, so it's become a whole thing, and it's kind of cool.
I really like bedroom pop if it's this, because it's having such a nice aesthetic. Yeah. Actually, I like nearly every genre that is out there. And also to hop on one of the phrases you told right in the beginning of this episode about bringing a story into a instrumental track, that makes us lo-fi and chill beats producer like the classic ones, you know, Beethoven, Mozart, they also brought emotions into vocal-less music, actually.
Well, and I had even my rep with Downtown Music, who just got bought out by UMG potentially. So, which is interesting, because as a fiercely independent artist, I don't know how I like that. But even my rep at Downtown Music was like, "Yeah, to be honest, we don't take instrumental artists super seriously with stuff like sync placements and stuff like that." I was like, well, that seems sort of silly, because most of what you hear in movies is instrumental. Like, it's pretty rare you hear vocal music in movies.
Yes, that's true.
But then I'm like, who when you think greatest composer of all time,
Mm-hmm.
and you're always thinking of people like Beethoven
Mm-hmm.
and like instrumental people, and I even think like you like pioneers in some way, but the example I always go to is Fatboy Slim, Rockefeller
Oh
Stank.
yeah, I love
That
that song.
song, yeah, it's a great song,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still like blowing up. Like he gets millions of streams every year, and that
Mm-hmm.
song's old. And like you could probably be pretty critical if you got into like he didn't technically compress it right and so on and so forth. But like there's something about that song that everyone connected with it,
Mm-hmm.
even though it just has like this one little vocal sample looped,
And it's
the idea that
so funky. The
it's super
song is
good.
so funky. I love it.
But yeah, the idea that instrumental music is somehow worth less is just ridiculous to me. And I love singing and I love writing lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, just that there's a strange sort of concept. Or even when I tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, I work full time in music, which it's a variety of things. I don't make
Mm-hmm.
all of my money from streaming. It's from like doing work for other people and stuff. But they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh really, what kind of music? And then when they figure out it's instrumental, it's like, oh, it's like, I thought you were a big deal but you don't sing. It's like, what? No, it's still valid. People still
Yeah,
like it
but
and connect with it.
let's say if you're switching to EDM, or okay, less EDM because EDM has a lot of vocals,
Yeah.
but techno is like such a huge thing, and it's blown up so hard since the last 6-7 years. Even though it was always there, it kind of went super big, and
Yeah.
yeah, more than like some small vocal chops that someone sampled from somewhere. There's no lyrics on it at all.
Yeah. Well, even Skrillex, like, well, he can sing, but he's for the most part he's a music producer, but he's mega famous. Or Deadmau5,
Yeah.
he's my Canadian boy, so I got to shout him out. And it's funny to me is like he's someone who, while I admire his knowledge and his chops, I don't really listen to his music, but he's had a massive following over like just 4 on the floor house beats with some cool synth work. So
Deadmau5, actually, I was watching his masterclass on producing. You know, I don't know if it's still a thing, but there was this like Netflix, but called Masterclass, and you can watch different learning videos from different people. There was even I don't know who was on there, but I guess like some famous cooker showed how to cook. I think even Morgan Freeman got a masterclass. I can't really tell about what, but he was on
how
there
to have
too.
a cool voice.
And yeah, Deadmau5 had some really great like inputs that I learned so many stuff over the last few years, obviously, but I know that I learned like 2 or 3 things that are still in my production routine that I got from him from this 2 hours masterclass.
Yeah. I think I only watched the free preview because I didn't have money for the whole masterclass. But yeah, there's some stuff I learned from him. But one thing that's always stuck with me is he says sometimes just like sit back and just listen and just vibe to your track. Instead of being like, is that frequency correct? Is my compression speed? Is like, just be like, does this sound good? Because that's what actually matters.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's also pretty important while being creative. Let's say if you're working on an original track, just like get some chords laid down and then sit back, and nobody have to like speed run making art. And sometimes when I started producing, I was like super concerned about, okay, now I have the melody, now I have to do a bass line, and I experimented like in a rush and everything sounds like shit. And with the other approach, like you have it going, you land back, you listen to it, and then the melody comes to your head naturally because something is missing, let's say the bass line, and you are listening to the beat, and then your instinct goes like boom, 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 boom. And then you can recreate just that idea that you beatbox like a bit while listening to the song. That's what I start doing on drums. That was such a big impact on making better drums. Just like start with the snare, because the snare is always there on 24.
Yeah.
Maybe pitch it, switch it a little bit off grid so it's more swingy. And then for hi-hats, that was always like my biggest issue, having cool hi-hats. Now I'm like, just make everything else, listen, and kind of start badly beatboxing some hi-hats. Like,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Here and here and here. Draw it in. It sounds good.
Yeah. Before I had any kind of like little drum pad or anything, and I still like often just based on where I am or where I'm working, because I work on the go a lot, if I don't have any sort of like MIDI pads or anything, sometimes trying to do like a shuffle rhythm on grid when you're dragging samples around and stuff is tough. So I do a lot of just like recording myself beatboxing and then going in and like dropping the samples over where I could see the transients and stuff to just like actually convert what I beatboxed into. Same with melodies, which has actually been a good practice too, to if you have trouble transcribing by ear, transcribe yourself, like sing a melody and then try to figure out what the heck you just sang. And it'll teach you to be able to hear notes and find them. Because I've done a lot of that. There's a lot of really awkward notes on my phone where I'm out somewhere and suddenly I'm like, wait, I think I have an idea for the drum beat, and then I'm just like quietly in a corner of a store beatboxing into my phone or something.
Next time, do it super loud, and when people ask you what you're doing, then show them your Spotify,
and then I can get more fans.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I should probably start doing those records too. But I started like when I'm working and I hear some let's say a screwdriver falls down on a specific material, and I'm like, oh, that sounds fire. Let me record that. Yeah, that's music should be super creative and not by force, in my opinion. And then just do whatever the hell you want.
Well, and that's
go for it.
So why often some of the best music comes from like hobbyists is because they don't have the pressure and they don't feel like the desperation. And that's something like I took a risk by deciding to go full-time into music, and I still do odd jobs and other work on the side. But one of the biggest like mistakes some people make is they'll decide to go full-time music and then immediately feel this desperation because they're like, I gotta get this music out so I can pay rent. And then it comes through in your music, because now it's just like whatever, splice loop you could find or whatever you could come up with really quickly that you pumped out. Whereas if you can keep it fun and you keep it about enjoying what you do, then you come up with more creative and more relaxed things, and it sounds a lot more genuine. And I think even if someone doesn't know what they're hearing, if they don't know why, I think people can tell. They can hear the desperation and the sort of like lifeless going through the motions in your music when it's not something you enjoy anymore.
Yes, I can totally agree on that point. And you should not go like 100% in on your music, but rather build up something that you really enjoy doing day to day. And watch out that the music has always enough space, so you have enough time working on your music projects. So don't have to worry about paying rent. And there are like a million different ways to still make a living with music, but it don't have to be just your beats and streaming or your music and record deals. You can, what I started to do just like as a new business, started in early November. I kind of had this idea in my head after listening Joe Rogan's podcast and then listening to a German podcast. And obviously you cannot compare the numbers, but it's kind of same big in the German speaking countries. And I instantly realized that the Joe Rogan podcast is perfectly mixed and mastered. And then I start to going through different podcasts here in the German talking region. And so far, nobody really takes action on getting their episodes mastered or mixed. And yeah, now I'm kind of cold emailing podcasters like, hey, here I am. Want to sound better?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still a lot of work, but I have this feeling that if staying consistent on this idea, that this can become my day job. And the fact that I don't have to leave the house to go like working as an electrician, then come home again, and after a 10-hour shift like today, I'm super tired and don't have the power to truly make good beats, because just like the body is tired, the mind is tired. You can really create a life that goes hand in hand with your creative work. In that case, I would also do a normal work, but it's in the studio. And when I have a break time, let's create some loops and then hop on another project again.
Yeah. I guess it's also worth considering like what your motivation is if you're thinking about doing music full time, because a lot of people see it as being like big money because you see the super famous people. But that's very rare. It's very rare that someone gets super rich off of music. But for me, the thing was, I'd rather love what I do, and I'd rather be excited to get up and start working than like be miserable but wealthy.
We have to say, and this is a fact, the most super rich artists that comes from music did not get rich with the music. Let's say if you're an artist that get pushed like by big name labels, I don't have to name them, we all know the names, and they're giving you like money to produce your album, but you have to pay for like everything, like for the cover art, for the mix, the master, the studio session if you're a rapper or a singer. And then you own the money to the label back. They don't just gift it to you, here you go, and enjoy your life. You have to pay that back. And let's say, yeah, rappers are flexing with like gold chains and diamond necklaces and all that stuff. But if that's like what they get through the label, just to flex around, and let's not talk about the fact that most of it is fake. It's so nice that Billie Eilish actually told in the interview, yeah, all my eyes is fake. Most of my watches are fake. I just have it for the style in the video.
Yeah.
And intelligent artists like keep a percentage of their earnings and reinvest it. I know there's one super big rapper in Germany, and yeah, he made his own label. It was also supported by the very big ones, but now he's rich because he bought a lot of houses and went into this real estate business. He did not become a millionaire just by making rap music. He made it because he did some business besides the music. But only from music you will never be super rich. Never. And let's say you get the hype from the crowd, you get the hype from the world. To today's time, you get forgotten as quick as you are famous. Like you're probably famous for a year, and then the people stop talking about you, and the trends switch so often. And that's why I see art as art and business as business. And I don't like to mix both too much. if you're just doing music because you love doing the creative part, you love creating something new, and you make it with your heart and soul, that tracks are great. And if you have million listeners on that, or just like a couple hundreds, if you're happy with the creation, if you're happy with the progress, just sitting in the studio and enjoying life doing this, then you are a winner. Then you don't need much more. If it feeds you and pays your rent, you actually don't need a big house, or you don't need like a private jet. Especially as a producer as we are, we like to stay at home in our cozy homes making beats. For what do we need a private jet?
Yeah.
We don't need that actually, right?
Totally. Well, that's, a lot of, because again, like I said, I just took a risk. I went through, I have some health issues that prevent me from doing certain types of work where I have a chronic illness that goes in and out of remittance. So when it's in remittance, I'm not experiencing symptoms, and I can work really hard, and I could go get construction jobs, and everyone's like, oh, he works really hard, and then I'll just disappear for a month, and they're like, oh, where did that guy go? So I need to find a way to go through life without that, where I could still work while I'm sick and stuff like that. So I took a risk, but also part of it's just that it's easy for me to be content. Like, I'm content to, like you said, just pay my rent and pay my bills. But then with the business side too, is you notice almost every producer has a course these days.
Yeah.
And it's because they're like, okay, music isn't where the money comes from. I need to get money from somewhere. And the big business thing, like if you go to a seminar or you take a course, you buy a book or whatever, almost all of them are going to tell you, like, create value content or offer value. What value do you offer? And for a lot of music producers, the most obvious route is like, well, I know how to EQ a snare, so I will sell snares, or I will teach people how to EQ snares. And then they end up there being like a music producer for music producers. And that works for people like LJ. That's kind of his whole career now. But that's almost overdone, and I feel dishonest making another course to say the exact same thing. So then my thinking is, how can I add value?
But hey, let's be honest. We need a good masterclass on how to make not shitty snares.
That's fair. You should make one.
Oh no, I don't feel like the right one for this.
I don't know that I've ever been happy with a snare ever in a single track I've released. It's always been a compromise. But
if we have to ask someone about how to mix snares pretty well, we have to travel back in time and ask OG Kanye, because in his old productions the snares were like pretty dope.
That's true. But
you know this one song, Colored Green by Schoolboy Q? Every time when I'm alone at home and I listen, it doesn't matter if with speakers or with headphones, and there's like this sound in the background, super loud, of a door slamming. Every time I make like, when I hear it for the first time after like some weeks and I'm not used to it, I remember like playing some video games. I was alone at home. I had this bit music going on. Then this song came up, and I was like, "Whoa! Did someone just break into my house?"
It's funny. A lot of classic rock songs are actually really poorly mixed. Like, what's that? I think it's called Bang a Gong by T-Rex. There's a cowbell in it, and the cowbell is the loudest thing in that track. And every time I hear it, I'm like, man, you should have turned down that cowbell a little bit. But again, that's to the point that, like, it doesn't need to be technically perfect if it sounds good, if it's a vibe, and if people can connect with it. And I kind of appreciate that. What was it? Kings of Leon and their really early stuff. When they do like the rough recording, and then they track the individual instruments, and you can hear that when they'd be like tracking the drums in the background, the rest of the band's playing pool. so you can hear like the balls cracking on the pool table and stuff like that.
Oh, but
Just like very subtly in the mix. And I was like, I actually kind of love that because it makes me feel like I'm there and like I'm part of this gang and just hanging out with them. It's cool.
That's why this ambient sounds in, let's say, lo-fi or chill beats, that's why they are so important for a mood. I cannot like listen straight up 2 hours to a playlist that every song got rain on it. But
yeah,
if one comes up with like super nice rain in the background, it's super cool. The same with like beach noises or forest noises, some birds in the background. I really love that kind of atmospheric sounds. That's just like you just told, that gets you into the scene.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of inaudible conversations where you can like tell it's people talking, but you can't actually hear what they're saying. It's kind of like, oh no, shut up, in the background, and you're like I always feel like that kind of creates a cool atmosphere.
Yeah, and this is something super cool that, yeah, let's say the best productions I know are also, they have always something that's a bit dirty. I guess you should know that song, Cradles by Suburban, the one song that was super big on TikTok.
Okay.
And he got like the cleanest bass. When I listen to the track in the car and the bass makes like everything goes. But the synth, I guess it was the synth, yeah, it sounds so dirty, as if it's not mixed at all. But it kind of give it this special characteristic that that would make the song boring. If everything is perfect, the song is boring. But if you have like just one element like popping out, it will take like it will form the characteristic of the whole track.
Well, and here's some free $1 million advice for anyone who's listened to the whole podcast up to this point. So before the pandemic and lockdowns and stuff, I did a lot of stagehand work for concerts and venues, which was really cool. I got to meet some of like favorite musicians, and I'd be holding their guitar and just like trying to stay calm. So I had to learn how to not freak out when I meet celebrities. But one thing that really stood out to me with one of the bands is, because I'd be there through their sound checks, is the guy goes up and he has this acoustic guitar and he strums his guitar. And it sounded awful. It was really thin. It was really tinny. And it was like they just put like a high pass filter on it and ran it up to like 400 or something. Like it just had no body to this guitar sound. And I was like, wow, I can't believe his guitar sounds so terrible. But then when the whole band came in, you could hear that guitar just above everything else. Just this little brightness that rode above the rest of the mix, and the bass and the drums all sounded so full and filled out that bottom end. And I was like, okay, yeah. So each individual thing only needs to be doing like 30% of the work. Like if each individual thing has your full frequency spectrum and it sounds too good on its own, that by trying to like compete for the spotlight by having the best, fullest sounding guitar tone or the best, fullest sounding bass, it actually does a disservice to your mix. Whereas having each thing know its space and live in it, and like even if you're not EQing, just in like writing, like knowing when is the appropriate time for a drum solo, right? Like if you drum solo for 3 minutes, that's going to be exhausting. But
it's also, I heard this rule of 3, that your ear and brain can only really focus on 3 elements in the song.
Interesting.
Let's say bass, vocals, and drums. Or guitar, vocals, and bass, and the drums are like super all over the place or in the background. And I kind of try to implement that in the mixes as well. So really give everything its individual space. And sometimes just like having a new element come in you should like take down something else, and let's say you can turn down the volume or just filter more out of it or remove it completely.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know
I found
this breakdown, sorry, you know this breakdown parts, like when the drums go away but the bass is still playing? I love that because the bass takes so much more space and it's like so present then, you know, just because the drum left.
Well, and that's even like the classic putting like a low cut or a high pass filter at like 20 hertz ish in your mix. By cutting out or most things in my mix, and this is going to be in my free ebook when I finally get around to writing it. Most things in your mix don't need anything below like 100 hertz, sometimes even 200 hertz. Give that space to the bass, and it'll make your whole track sound louder. By
That's
cutting
true.
out unnecessary things that you don't even really hear, then it reduces the technical volume so that you can increase it and it sounds louder and fuller. It's like less is more, but yeah, I learned that because I had that example of being a stagehand, but even when I did more singer-songwriter stuff, whenever I play alone, the way I play my guitar is very percussive. Like I very drive the heel of my hand into the body and it sounds like a kick drum. Anytime I play with the band, I'm so like, it's an exercise for me to not do that because it drives drummers nuts. Where they're like, you're like hitting your guitar at a different time than I'm hitting the kick, and it sounds out of phase and it's weird. And it's like, please stop hitting your guitar. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I have to like tone down what I'm doing. And I think it's the same with like mixing or producing or whatever you're doing. Like
Actually,
think about serving the song.
There's one band that mastered the playing in different BPMs. Maybe you know what band I'm talking about. It's from the hard rock scene. And the bass, the guitar, and the drums are in most of the songs in different BPMs, like super syncopated. It's a Tool. Probably heard of them. And you know, they did so mathematical, fascinating music. They have one song that is broken down to the Fibonacci spiral with the number of words the singer sang in the song, like went through this Fibonacci spiral. That's so amazing, so fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, just see, we're already 1.5 hours into it. The time flew by. Do you want to like say some nice life advices for the listeners? Like, I don't know, maybe
some life advices.
Yeah.
Here's my general life. Don't take yourself too seriously. I think, especially as I lean more into social media, if we spend a little less time thinking about ourselves and just sort of observing and listening and seeing at what's going on about us, you're going to have a lot better time in life. If you're thinking about yourself and thinking about how great you are and how serious everything to do with you is, you're going to be frustrated and angry and sad a lot more often than if you just don't take yourself too seriously.
Yes.
Is my life advice.
I can 200% agree on that. And yeah,
nice.
And just always be yourself, no matter what. There will always be people criticizing it, but on the other hand, there will always be people loving it. And that goes kind of hand in hand. But just, don't take it so serious. That was a really nice talk. I enjoyed it. I hope you have fun.
That was fun. I was a little worried we'd run out of things to talk about, but we could probably keep going.
For me, we could keep going for another hour or two. Yeah. But I would say, if you had fun, let's do just like another episode like later. Because I don't have like a restriction of having each guest only once on the show. And I think after let's say a month or so, we both have like maybe some learnings or have a good topic in our head to talk about.
Yeah. No, I'd love to come back after, I've tried some of the things I've talked about and just have more to talk about and heard more of what other people have to say that you interview. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And you said that it's probably coming out next year. I don't think so. I think I want to release it still this year. But
Nice.
after the whole the Christmas nights, somewhere between the 25th and the 1st.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's funny. My music's actually doing pretty good right now for streams.
Yeah.
Like November was worse than December has been.
Same. I don't know why, but what I recognized is that the cold winter seasons, and especially during the school break holidays, because a lot of the students have also to learn for their exams.
Yeah.
And this time, I don't know is it in Canada the same?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. And just after like working a whole year, most of the people, that's time where they took a 2-week break holiday. And I guess that's a perfect timing for chill.
Yeah, especially like colleges and universities, the higher level stuff are still in exams right now until Friday will probably be the last day. So I think that's where I've specifically been advertising things that I feel like college students would like, where I'm like, here's some Zelda lo-fi, or here's some Star Wars or something that was like, if they're just looking for study music and they saw an ad for Star Wars lo-fi, and it's been working. Like my Star Wars album flopped when I first released it, and it's doing a lot better right now.
Yeah, I think it's also important to like keep promoting older releases. Like from time to time when you think, okay, this is great, I should like give it a second chance. Yeah. But it's funny, here we have like the last exam, the winter exams, I guess in February. I never did higher education, but from friends, I might remember that they told me that it was February. Yeah. But let's say we cut the podcast here. Even though I would love to like talk for hours straight, we can still like talk. I just want to thank you now officially in the episode, and also thanks to the listeners. And yeah, see you next time. Peace.